John.
You have enough? Oh, no, not yet.
John, do you mind reading that line of abundance from the Daily Word? I see abundance even when.
Oh,
So can we just
yeah.
close our eyes and take that in? I see abundance even when there is an appearance.
It says, I see abundance even when outer circumstances indicate lack.
I see abundance even when outer circumstances appear to be lacking. I was contemplating, everything is in alignment. I've been contemplating my talk for the last few weeks, for the last month, because it's such an honor to stand before you. To stand before you as a woman who spent a lot of her life in fear, in insecurity, self-doubt, and my goodness, did I have a dramatic pageant for catastrophizing. I was very, very good at that. I could imagine the worst scenarios possible for myself and for my life. And even though I was raised with a mother who has a mystical sense of God, the awareness of God, a love for God, and who instilled this day after day after day. So of course, I was a teenager. I rebelled. I couldn't stand it. I wanted a hip mom. You know, her talking about faith and God was not hip at all. But I just found that I was the opposite of my mother. I could see good in others. I could see good in the world, but I couldn't see good in myself. So it is an honor to stand before you as someone through this philosophy who's awakened to knowing that I am a precious child of God. So it's miraculous. It's miraculous that I'm alive. I have contemplated suicide many, 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 many times. But with the help of this philosophy, these universal spiritual truths that are the same today and forever, the doubt, the fear, the worry, the pessimism began to transform. And I can really say that I'm beginning to live what Jesus called the abundant life. I'm living it from the inside out. Outer circumstances may not look abundant or may look chaotic, but I see and know an abundance in my heart that I never knew before. So it's a new season, it's a new beginning. So when I said to Spirit, I'm an open channel, how may I serve? What do you want me to speak about? I heard abundant life over and over again. And it's John 10, verse 10. I have come so that they may have life and have life abundantly. I have come so that they may have life and have life abundantly. What does that mean? What is abundant life? And what would the world have us think is abundant life? Is abundant life a life that is materially and financially abundant? Is it an abundance of well-being? And what is it? Well, abundant life is a divine connection with God mind, with the eternal, with the source, with the quantum field. And we come to know this abundant life by praying ceaselessly. So what does that mean? Growing up Catholic, my mother is very, very religious to this day, and every day she does Divine Mercy rosary at 3 o'clock. So does the so praying ceaselessly, does that look like reciting ritualistic prayers that we say with clockwork every day at a certain time? And what is praying? As truth students, what does prayer mean to us? As truth students, when we are thinking, we are praying. So we are either praying to the negativity, the gods, and the demons, and the darkness, and the sorrow, and the regret, and the fear, or we are praying to the one power and the one presence. And our constant prayer thought is a seed that we are planting in the law of mind. So as truth students, we come here every Sunday not to just worship the Most High, which is crucial, God first, ourselves, but to remember that there is a God that is the engineer and the law of mind that is an engine. And as God, men and women, because we are divine, we are spirits having a human experience, as God men and God women, we are planting seeds in this engine. And we are creating after their kind. That is our prayer. So you can do all of the beautiful rituals. You can meditate, you can read, you can pray affirmative prayers, but it's what you do in between all those things that is your actual prayer, and your prayer that is ceaseless. So I became a truth student, or became fascinated with this philosophy at 19, and read every book possibly known to man in the philosophy. Louise Hay, Ernest Holmes, the Fillmores, Emmett Fox, Napoleon Hill. I read it all. I was constantly studying. I took a habit, which I still have. I always have a New Thought book in my purse. So now the books are smaller, and there's a little notebook, and I study on the train, and I could regurgitate all of this. And yet, my life was a mess. I was suffering from depression and anxiety. You know my story. It was a mess. I couldn't understand why. I didn't understand that with my thinking, I was praying ceaselessly. And instead of living the abundant life, I was living a life of abundant lies. Lies and false beliefs, limited beliefs, and dark patterns that I was just regurgitating into my universe. So we are powerful beings, and especially those of us who are creative and talented, we will create some drama. If you are not creating the abundant life, you are creating abundant drama. And I was very, very good at creating so much drama in my consciousness that every other day I didn't want to be here, and every other day was just a challenging day. But I lucked out. I was blessed because I've always loved people, and I have a natural exuberance for life. So in the midst of creating all of this illness and dis-ease in my consciousness, I was out having fun, traveling, being in fashion shows, doing makeup, singing, acting. I was doing it all. But I could not get out of my way. I couldn't get out of my own way. And I really thought, I need to win the jackpot or the lottery so I can go to the Himalayas and meditate with the monks, because that's the only way I would awaken. I really thought, unless I leave my life and there's a hall over and everything changes, I want to awaken. Because I was fascinated with this idea of awakening and Buddhahood. and Christhood and ascended masters. I was so fascinated, but I didn't realize, even though I heard it over and over again, that I needed to look within. What did that mean? Did that mean that just by meditating, I would awaken? There's a lot that meditation can do. We connect with the oneness. It cleanses us of our own toxicity, of this world's negative vibration. It's a force field of protection. So I admonish you to meditate. I was leaving my mother's house about 6 months ago. I got in my car. I kind of looked around. It was a very early Sunday, or it was an early Saturday morning. There was no one around. I was in the parking lot. But I got in my car and looked in the rear view mirror, and there was nothing behind me, and I thought, I feel like I'm going to get into an accident. I kind of said it out loud. I thought, that's weird. And I could have said, usually, the old Martine would have said, that's a crazy thought. You're just having a dramatic thought. But I thought, let me meditate. So I meditated for 5 minutes. And I looked around me again, and there was no one behind me. And I usually have to turn my car a quarter, so I don't back up like this. I turn the car to the right. I do
U-turn?
A U-turn, like that way. And as I was doing my U-turn, I had looked, I meditated, I had the feeling, I think I'm going to get into an accident. I meditated for 5 minutes. I looked around after my meditation, no car behind me. And as I was making that U-turn, someone had pulled up behind me, and I was basically at 7 o'clock with them. I almost slammed right into the car and stopped. They were at 7 o'clock, and I was at 6:55, or they were at 6:55, and I was at 7 o'clock. A car out of nowhere had pulled up behind me. By the time I looked around and started moving, there was actually a car there. And I stopped this close to that car. I would have, boom, slammed and thrown that car that way and slammed everything. And the man got out, you touched my car. And we looked, and I was this close to the car. I didn't touch his car, but I was this close. And I was high enough so that my rear view mirror, that mirror was a little beyond his car and didn't smash into his car. So, when we meditate, it becomes a force field. It protects us. So there is merit to it. So did I awaken in that moment? I opened myself up so that I could hear God, receive divine protection. Whatever was going to happen was ameliorated. Something else happened. The divine presence came in and protected me from. So, divine protection. So meditation creates a force field. But was I awakened? Through my meditation practice, have I awakened? I have become aware of God more and my relationship to the Most High. And I receive a protection. I just feel kind of enveloped in a comforter. It's like a big comforter, that covers me, and I'm protected. And yet that's not what led to my awakening. My awakening began to happen when I got so sick and tired of always having a reason to be sad and worried and fearful. And I saw my life in 2 lists. All the things that were wrong, the 50 million things that were wrong, and the 5 things that were right. Because there were more things wrong than right. And I said to myself, I've been studying this philosophy for over 20 years, and I've never really practiced it. I'm going to stop looking at what's wrong in my life and focus on the 4 things that are right. And when someone begins to ask me, how are you? I'm going to say I'm great. Even though in the back of my mind, I know that there are 50,000 things that are wrong and only 4,000 things that are right. And I want all this stuff fixed and perfect right here and now. Because I have 4 things to be grateful for, I'm going to say my life is great, that I'm doing great, and that all is well. And when I began to focus on those 4 things, It could be, I'm lucky to have a mother that I love and who loves me. There are people, I see clients every day who have challenging family-parent relationships. I'm gonna focus on, I have a roof. I want a rooftop in Paris, not in Roxbury, Massachusetts, but I'm going to focus on how blessed I am to be living in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm going to focus on the fact that there are no bombs dropping on my head. I don't live in a place where there's bombing going on, and I'm scared to my core, and buildings are constantly being destroyed. Or I don't live in a country where there's a dictator. I know that there's an appearance, but you should have lived in Haiti from 1940 to 1975 to really know what a dictator is, and live by curfew, and not be able to meet together for a book club, or go to the theater, or know that your brother, your uncle, your father, or your best friend could just suddenly disappear because he didn't stand up when the dictator was going by. So as I began to look at the 4 things that were right instead of the 50,000 that were wrong, suddenly this philosophy began to make sense. Suddenly this philosophy, I recognized that I had been praying without ceasing based on my focus. And as I began to focus on the few things that I thought, in my judgment, that were right in my life, I began to experience the abundant life. So once again, it's John, verse 10. I have come so that they, Jesus said, I have come so that they would have life, and have life abundantly. So what is the abundant life? So Dr. Joseph Murphy, who I love, says that you are here to lead a full and happy life, to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. All the spiritual, mental, and material riches of the universe are the gifts of God, good in themselves and capable of a good use. God is the giver and the gift. Man is the receiver. God dwells in man, and this means that the treasure house of infinite riches is within you and all around you. I'm going to read that again. God dwells in man, and that means that the treasure house of infinite riches is within you and all around you. By learning the laws of mind, you can extract from that infinite storehouse within you everything that you need in order to live life gloriously, joyously, and abundantly. So, there is a treasure house of riches. It's within you and all around you. I'd like to talk to you about what's all around us, so that you know that there is actually so much abundant life all around you. Science have said that in the average human body, there is approximately 37.2 trillion cells. Depending on the size of your body, you could have a third more than that. So the average body has 37.2 trillion cells. Within the Hubble telescope, they've calculated that between the galaxies and stars, there are 70,000 million stars. There are 70,000 million stars. So scientists at the University of Hawaii were trying to contemplate how many leaves there were on an average oak tree. So your average oak tree has between 200,000 and 500,000 leaves.
Wow.
Your average. And the average oak tree is about 70 years old. And there's some that are about 200, 300, or 400. So that's the average, and that's the average small tree. And
That's at one time, not throughout all its many lives?
No,
Just at one time?
yes,
Wow.
just at one time. So the tree that you go by, the one tree not the 10 trees that you go by, have between 250 and 500,000 leaves. And we live in lack in our consciousness. So they, this was amazing. So this was, okay. So in a drop of water, but get this, the smaller things get, the more there is. So in a drop of water, 10 drops of water, you actually have double the amount of the 70 million stars. In one, the hydrogen molecules in 10 drops of water actually ends up being more than the stars in the universe. So the smaller things get, the more that they are. There are 326 million trillion gallons of water on Earth. There are 360 million trillion gallons of water on Earth. On Earth, in terms of diversity, there are more than 1.5 million species of animals, fungi, and bacteria that have been documented. They actually think that there are at least another 8 million that scientists have not discovered. These are the documented. So 1.5 million have been documented, but they think that there are about another 11 million that have not been documented. And they are finding new animals, fungi, bacteria every single day. So, and you might like this, there are 300 quadrillion grains of sand on the planet. A quadrillion is a 1 followed by 15 zeros, and I think there are 10 trillions in a quadrillion, but a quadrillion is a real number, and there are, it's a real number, it's after a trillion, and there are more than something like 300 quadrillion grains of sand on the planet. And let's talk about our bodies. In a day, we breathe in 11,000 liters of oxygen, of air. By the end of the month, you have breathed in 330,000 liters of air in a month, and in a year, you will have breathed in 120,450,000 liters of air in a year. So we've drunk 6 liters of water. So over 120 million liters of air in 1 year. The average human heart beats 80 beats per minute. Your heart beats 4,800 times per hour. That's a whopping 115,000 times per day. 115,000 times per day your heart is beating, and in a year your heart will beat 42,048,000 times a year. 48,048,000 times a year. So if you live to be 80, your heart will have beaten 3 billion times in 80 years.
Wow.
And scientists have also calculated how many humans have been birthed on the planet since the Paleolithic time, which was 50,000 BC. There have been, they're assuming, because not all of it has been accounted for, 105 billion births since the beginning of Paleolithic time.
Is that when, like, this species of humanity started?
I think it's Paleolithic is when man kind of stood upright and began to walk on the planet. And I think it's before amoebas and animals coming out of the water and becoming mammals.
So 105 billion births?
Yes. 105 billion births estimated. This is based on what they kind of the cave paintings, what they can account for. What they can account for from ledgers, written in Sanskrit, Rosetta Stone, all of this hieroglyphics, what they can kind of account for. General assumptions of grain, how much grain was eaten in Egypt and Babylonia and things like that. So this is what all of this is what we can account for based on the technology of what we have and what we have access to. So your heart is going to beat 300 billion times if you live to be 80. And in this day, it's going to beat over 100,000 times. And yet, we as humanity, we as individuals, walk around thinking that we're not abundant. And that abundant life is not expressing in our world, in ourselves. We have 37.5 trillion cells in our body, and we get a new body every 7 years. And yet we think we're old and limited. The average tree has 500,000 leaves on it, one tree. And yet when we're flying over anywhere and we get to see this landscape, we see millions upon millions of trees. How could you live in lack? How could you be in poverty? When within you and all around you, throughout the cosmos, there is unlimited abundance. The grains of sand on the earth are a quadrillion. I could hardly find information on how many trillions are there in a quadrillion. I think it's 15 trillion. I'm not sure. It was so hard, I didn't want to get into all of the math papers. And so, as we begin to contemplate ourselves and the majesty all around, we will begin to see that in our very essence, this Creator, this power has made us abundant. And Jesus said, I've come so that you would have life and have it more abundantly. You guys already have it. You're not aware that you have it. I want you to have it more abundantly because I desire that you would be conscious of it. Conscious, aware, awakened to it. And it would begin to dissolve everything that you think is wrong. Wrong with this world, wrong with your life, wrong with your circumstances, listening to a media that is constantly telling you to live in fear, lack, and worry, discord, disagreement, violence, and aggression, in order that you be distracted from what is real.
Yes.
What I've read to you is real. Miraculous power of God working in and through you and through this universe. This is what is real. That God's bounty is eternal. It's powerful. It's endless. It's unlimited. And it's in you and it's everywhere present. My beloveds, this is what we contemplate. This is what we are in agreement to know with our very breath and our beating hearts. So when you are in fear, when you are in lack and worry, I want you to put your hand on your heart and begin to know that in this day, your heart will beat over 100,000 times today. And that there is a miracle working power that is your very life. And as you tune into that power and begin to focus on what's right, I have a beating heart that will work for me over 100,000 times today. Life is good. I am living the abundant life. And so I'd like to end this message with all of us saying together this affirmation. So I just need a second. I have to find it in my book. This is by Dr. Joseph Murphy, who I adored. He was a divine science minister. He had been a Jesuit priest, came to the US in the 1900s, had a really successful church in LA, in Los Angeles, and I love how he puts the Bible together, the biblical and new thought together. And this is an affirmation that has changed my life from the inside out. So let's speak it together. And it doesn't matter what happens, it's all good. We're speaking it for all of us through the one power.
Is this it?
This is it. So it should say how to realize the abundant life.
Do you have more copies?
Oh, are there more copies?
No?
No, so if anyone could share, I'd like everybody to speak it. Fred, you got it, you have a copy, everybody
Where
has
is
a
it?
copy?
This thing.
Was it separate?
Yes, it's separate.
Oh.
Elisa, do you want to see this?
Where?
Oh, there's some right here. I'm sorry, there's some right there.
Oh, thanks. There are a lot, actually.
There are abundant.
Yes.
Anybody else? An abundance to share?
So I'm the kind of person, I carry these things in my purse, I take them out somewhere, I'm hearing crazy conversations that are going into my subconscious mind. I read it silently. So let's begin. Okay? I
know that to prosper means to grow spiritually along all lines. God is prospering me now in mind, body, and affairs. God's ideas constantly unfold within me, bringing to me health, wealth, and perfect divine expression. I am inwardly thrilled as I feel the life of God vitalizing every atom of my being. I know that God's life is animating, sustaining, and strengthening me now. I am now expressing a perfect, radiant body full of vitality, energy, and power. My business or profession is a divine activity, and since it is God's business, it is successful and prosperous. I imagine and feel an inner wholeness functioning through my body, mind, and affairs. I give thanks and rejoice in the abundant life.
Can we say it 2 more times?
I give thanks and rejoice in the abundant life. I give thanks and rejoice in the abundant life.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Amen.
Amen.
Beautiful.
Dr. Joseph Murphy.
Murphy?
Yes, Dr. Joseph Murphy.
Thank you.